I'm literally shaking right now because I just had a man approach me in a parking lot and it went fine. And I'm going to tell you why it went fine and how to address it, because it was in a book I read and this is how you're supposed to address it, but it scared me. I'm literally shaking. So this guy, I am alone with my son, by myself, a woman, and a male approached me in a parking lot. He's, "Excuse me, miss," and I don't know why in the hell he was approaching me or what he was trying to do. And before he was probably 30 feet from me when he said, "Excuse me, ma'am," and I turned around and I literally yelled at him and I said, "Do not approach me." And he like immediately started going in the other direction, and I just kept saying it over and over and over. I said, "Do not approach me, do not approach me." And he of course like got like, "What the F?" Like he started cussing and yelling like, what's your problem? And I looked at him and he actually then crossed a couple cars down from my car. He didn't come anywhere near me. He crossed a couple cars down from my car and was like, continuing to cuss and say, "What's your problem?" And I said, "You do not approach women in a parking lot." I just kept saying, "Do not approach me. You do not approach women in a parking lot," like yelling it. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot, ever. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot. And if a male does approach you, you need to turn around and use the strongest voice that you can possibly use with them. Don't be polite. They need to literally screw off. No male should be approaching you in a parking lot.
All right, family, so listen, I'm doing this video again. I actually just did this video on a different topic of why men are not approaching women. But I wanted to redo this video. First time I'm ever doing this. But I want to do it from the perspective of if this lady came to me to tell me this experience, okay? As a coach, I often try to help people through their traumas, trying to help them heal from past experiences and things like that so they can get on to making their best version of themselves possible, right? So if she came to me to talk to me about the situation, I kind of want you guys to see how I would respond back to her, okay? So let's get into it.
I'm literally shaking right now because I just had a man approach me in a parking lot and it went fine. And I'm going to tell you why it went fine and how to address it, because it was in a book I read and this is how you're supposed to address it, but it scared me. I'm literally shaking.
Okay, the reason that she's shaking is because her fear is very real, okay? So first I want to validate the feelings that she felt fear. However, that's not a reason to project that fear onto the person that scared you. What happens in life is when you're traumatized, when you feel overwhelming fear, anger, it gets projected onto the person as in they made you angry or they scared you, right? And they're doing a bad thing because you feel a negative emotion, right? Well, we have to learn that how you feel may not be what they're doing to you. Some of what we feel is linked to our trauma. Some of what we feel is just linked to our imagination. Some of us have a very healthy sense of an imagination, so a lot of us are scaring ourselves and we are painting the world that we live in, okay? I always say that we are ants trying to define the universe from our mounds, okay? Your personal experience, even if you have a personal experience that completely explains why you feel this way, it is not reality. It does not mean that that's how men are if you had a bad experience with a man. It does not mean that this is how women are if you had experience with a woman that was negative, right? And so we have to understand that your personal experience doesn't equal this is how you paint the world. But here's what's happening. She's overwhelmed with fear, and she believes now because of this fear, she has a right to act out, right? So she begins to yell at the guy. But so far she says she's read it from a book. If this was my client, I would ask her, what book was that? What did this book say? How was she before she read this book? And I would also want to know what may have happened in her past in a parking lot or whatever that made her feel this way. I would validate those feelings because let's just assume she had reasons, okay? It still doesn't paint the world. So this person is not the person that did that to you. And the reason that you're reacting in this way is because you haven't dealt with this situation. You understand? I said in my last video that mental trauma is far different from being sick in your body. So a mental sickness, a mental illness due to a trauma, due to an event that happened, the way you see the world, because of something that happened to you is far different than being sick in your body. We know when our body is not feeling well due to symptoms, but when it comes to our brain, the healing on that end is more on our self-work. Okay, so we have to contribute to our own healing, and knowing that we are sick in the mind is far more subtle than it is whenever you are sick in the body, right? You'll just see the world differently, and you'll react to how you see the world. And this may create a totally different person than you were before, a totally different personality than you were before. And those feelings may not be substantiated by reality, just your experience. So it is unhealthy, family. All right. But now that we know her fear is likely very real, let's continue.
So this guy, I am alone with my son, by myself, a woman, and
So we can take from this, being alone makes her feel vulnerable. Being with her son alone makes her feel vulnerable. And being a woman makes her feel vulnerable. We get it. There are certain things that women are exposed to in this world that men just may never have to experience as a reality, okay? Unless, of course, they go to prison, all right? But so with all that being said, we can understand why you would feel unsafe when you're alone. But again, this doesn't mean project on any person that makes you feel unsafe as if they're a perpetrator, okay? As if they're doing something to you. Your son in that moment, he is going to learn that men are violent, okay? If you are alone, a man should never approach a woman. And you're going to tell your son that. Don't you ever approach a girl. And you say, why, Mom? But why? What will men do to women if they approach them? What's the problem? You're going to have to tell your son your trauma. And he's going to hear that he's bad and that he's inherently bad. You understand? This is due to an experience. And this is why you have to heal. Okay? You have to do this self-work. All right? It's easy to hold on to this anger, or it's easier to hold on to this anger or pain than to deal with it. But you got to confront it, and you got to be accountable to it. And it may not be your fault that you experienced this, but it is your responsibility to do the self-work so you can heal yourself from this, because you're just going to paint the world. Okay? This poor man has experienced hell because of how she feels right now. Do you understand? We have no indication that he is coming at her to harm her, but she feels this way, so she's acting this way. Let's continue.
A male approached me in a parking lot. He's, excuse me, miss, and I don't know why in the hell he was approaching me or what he was trying to do. And before he was probably 30 feet from me when he said, excuse me, ma'am. And I turned around and I literally yelled at him. And I said,
okay, so he says, excuse me, miss. All right. And she has no idea why he approached her. And she's so afraid right now in this moment. She's with her son. She feels alone, even though she's in a huge parking lot, bright parking lot. So the fear is overwhelming and it's irrational. There is no good faith because we're going to assume the worst. We don't know why he's trying to speak to me, so let's just assume the worst. She's so afraid she doesn't just ask him, what can I do for you, sir? Please don't come any closer. What can I do for you? Right? I feel very uncomfortable in situations like this. Can I ask what you need? Right? No, she turns around and in fear starts to yell. I'm gonna tell you guys something. I've never experienced fear when dealing with a man or a situation at all in my life. But after the cancer threat and having to have my stomach removed to prevent cancer, I lost so much weight, so much strength. I didn't feel real secure about myself, right? And I found myself in a situation where this guy that owned this U-Haul place got really smart with me over the counter, right? Jamie and Lacey are in there getting a U-Haul. We're preparing for our first move into our first home together, right? And we're getting this U-Haul. And they walk in there, it's during COVID. I forget to tell them something, so I'm going in there behind them maybe about 5 minutes after they've been in there. I think they kept calling me, asking me stuff. And I wanted to just go on in to make it easier for them, right? So I go up to the door and it says no more than 3 people in here at a time, right? So I walked in behind there. It's only Jamie and Lacey in there. And the guy goes, well, only 3 people can be in here. And I said, is that including you? And he was just like, man, watch your mouth, something smart. This has never been my reaction, but I just started yelling, yo, who you think you talking to? I mean, I was screaming. I don't know necessarily why I did that day, but I believe it was to my insecurities I was feeling at that moment. I didn't have any energy. I could barely walk, could barely be active, and especially on this day, just very tired. And I didn't feel very secure in myself. And normally I don't handle myself like that because I'm very equipped when it comes to protecting myself and fighting. I've boxed. So I've been there, done that a lot, grew up fighting. So I don't feel fear in those moments. I feel secure. And so I don't overreact in those moments. But that day I did. And I learned something that day, right? When you feel threatened, when you feel insecure, or you don't trust yourself, you're likely to use yelling or some type of loud thing to intimidate a person to scare them away from doing something to you. You see what I'm saying? And so I'm thinking that this is what this is, okay? Because she's saying I'm a woman, she's already saying I'm weaker than a man. And so the irrational thing to do here is to say, because I'm weaker, I'm subject to danger because men are stronger, they are bad, right? And because women are weaker, they are in danger to men. Okay, when men use that strength to protect women, to help women every single day. Okay, I always watch these videos where these guys, this guy, he owns his own ant farm, right? And he tells you the different job duties of these ants, because you see some ants be small, and in the same colony, some of them be like 10 times the size of other ants, and they're not fighting each other, they're helping each other. In fact, they have no sense of competition within the tribe. Okay, they only see that larger ant as someone who can be efficient in their way, right? And they don't feel intimidated by that ant. They work together. That strength is used to help. It's not used to dominate. It's not a fearful thing. But in this world, notice we have sport and all these different competitive things. So we look at more of a size difference as something to be intimidated by. You know, we don't look at it as like we're unified. We are very separated. So that is now intimidating because someone is larger than us. What could they do to us, right? And so this is a framework or a lens that we look through, that if we didn't look through it, the world would be a much better place, because the truth is, because someone's larger than you does not make them violent. That would be to say the bigger somebody is, the more prone they are to violence, and that wouldn't be a healthy outlook on life. You understand? And we know that we don't live in a world where men are bad and women are angels. We know that any person can be bad, right? But again, I'm pointing all that out to say this is an irrational fear, okay? And it yields an irrational response, and she has no good faith for the person that is said, "Excuse me, miss," from 30 feet away. When you can deduce that there's so many different reasons he could be walking over that's not bad. You understand? But because she's so fearful, she's not she's not making up for, he said, "Excuse me, miss." He said, "Excuse me." He's at a great distance of 30 feet when he says it, so he's trying to make you feel comfortable. This is his way of seeing if he can approach. The fear is understandable, but she should have been more polite in trying to address why he was coming, because she said she didn't know why he was coming. She didn't deal with that. It's just, do not approach me. Doesn't matter why you're coming. I'm scared. I want you to stop. The best way I know to make you to stop is to act out right now. This is not planned. She's telling you what she did, right? So I would tell her that this is what happens when you're not healed. The person that you're gonna get is not the person that you are every day. When you're in a triggered moment, when you're in a traumatized moment, the person that you're gonna be can ruin your life, okay? It can ruin someone else's life. That's why you have to go get this help beforehand, okay? But this is a sign that she needs help. So if she was talking to me about that, we can now get to it, right? But in this moment, she's more thinking that men are the problem. This is not to her a sign that she should get help. But if she were talking to me, I would say, you definitely need some counseling sessions. You definitely need to talk to a professional. You definitely need to, right? But let's continue.
And I said, "Do not approach me." And he like immediately started going in the other direction, and I just kept saying it over and over and over. I said, "Do not approach me. Do not approach me." And he, of course, like got...
So when he started going in the other direction, she could have left well enough alone, right? And just let him go. He appears to be going away. Hopefully you're close enough to your car that you can go ahead and get in your vehicle and crank up and just leave, being that you have now deterred him, right? But she doesn't stop there. She keeps yelling out, "Do not approach me. Do not approach me." So what this is doing is drawing attention to the man, and that's why he gets upset. Like, what is your problem? Okay, you don't want somebody talking to you. I didn't even ask you why I left. I didn't say, "Yo, why you don't want me talking to you?" He just left, and she kept saying it. But again, it's irrational fear, and this is when people will start to look at her and say, "You're a Karen." And in this situation, rightfully so, because he actually wasn't doing anything to her. And whether her fear was real or not, let's assume that it is right here. She would be being a Karen, not to her, but to that man's reality, she absolutely would be. Do you understand? But let's continue.
Like, got like, "What the F did it?" Like, he started cussing and yelling, like, what's your problem? And I looked at him, and he actually then crossed a couple cars down from my car, and he didn't come anywhere.
The reason he said that is because he began to feel attacked, that you're screaming out, "Get away from me." You have to think you're in a public place, right? So you have to consider that there's other people around, or at least he feels like there could be. You're in a public place, right? And so you're yelling out, "Get away from me." He knows people's going to hear you. People are likely to believe a woman in these type of situations, right? And so he doesn't want to be looked at like he's some type of pervert, or that he was stalking you, or about to attempt to harm you in any way. So he wants you to stop, because you are the person that's bringing that on. So of course he's saying, yo, what is your problem? Like, chill out. And he's yelling, he's angry, because at this point he feels attacked. You understand? But this is all coming from your fear, your irrational fear that you have not yet dealt with. Or it's been adopted through this book. A lot of people don't have their own mind, family. They grift, which means that they take on the personality of a person that they've heard before them and start retorting everything that they say verbatim, as if it's their own words and emotions, family. And they'll ride that until they hear somebody else that they like a little bit more. You see what I'm saying? They don't really challenge what they hear with a critical mind. They just adopt what sounds good at the time. They're more convinced, instead of doing research and coming to their own conclusion, right? Again, that's a dangerous place to be in society, because it means that you will be piped into every opinion that you have. You understand? But let's continue.
We're near me. He crossed a couple cars down from my car and was like, what's continuing to cuss and say, what's your problem? And I say, you do not approach women in a parking lot. I just kept saying, do not approach me. You do not approach women in a parking lot, like yelling it. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot, ever. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot. And if a male does approach you, you need to turn around and use the strongest voice that you can possibly use with them. Don't be polite. They need to literally screw off. No male should be approaching you in a parking lot.
Okay, so now she's yelling, you know, do not approach a woman in a parking lot as a male. You should never approach a woman in a parking lot. I would say to her that, because you understand this is not the norm, this is not something that's understood socially, and when men and women interact with each other, you shouldn't have been so aggressive yelling this. She's saying, do not be polite at all. I see no reason why you shouldn't be polite, as this person has not given you a reason to be impolite. You understand? So I would try my best to get her to see that she was being a pain, okay? That she was being a problem with society, a problem in society. And it may be because something reasonable did happen to her, okay? But this is why we have to go and sit with someone and talk with them about the experience that we had, so they can help us talk through it, walk through it. You understand? I'll give you guys an example. Back in my early 20s, I was in Walmart and I was cashing a check, right? So I went to the customer area of Walmart, right? Customer service area of Walmart. And I'm filling out the paperwork or whatever, filling out my check and stuff like that. And I end up walking through Walmart, doing a little shopping after that, and ended up not having my phone anymore. My phone was gone, okay? So I looked everywhere for Walmart, through Walmart, retraced my steps, went back over to customer service, asked them if they had saw my phone. No, they hadn't. After about 30 minutes of retracing my steps, I ended up remembering that I bumped into some guys I went to school with, right? Black guys that I went to school with. And to be honest with you, as soon as I thought about them walking over to the buggy and saying what was up, when I was in the store on my way checking out, right? I thought they stole my phone. Like, that's what my brain began to do, is I thought they stole my phone, and my plan was to address these guys. And these weren't the type of guys that you just walk up to and ask them if they stole something from you. Okay, I already knew who they were. They all had reputations in the community. They didn't play. You understand? Which is one of the reasons I thought they stole the phone, right? But I was willing to risk it all, because ain't nobody about to steal nothing from me, right? So I was gonna go ask them if they stole my phone, okay? But before I asked them, I go to Walmart. I wanna get my ducks in a row. I convinced one of the Walmart workers that I believed that one of them stole my phone. I told them I was just over in customer service. I had my phone, now I don't have it anymore, and I think they may have done it. They ended up letting me see the camera, okay? So they told me to sit outside in this little waiting area for a while. I sat out there for maybe 20 minutes. They came back. I told them what time I came into the store. I guess they pinpointed and traced my steps from the time I pulled up, right? He calls me into an office and he shows me what happened. I'm in Walmart. I'm filling out my piece of paper, and there's this elderly white lady behind me. She's filling out to get some money or send some money or receive some money. So it's like this little MoneyGram thing. She puts it on top of my phone, man. Literally, she puts it on top of my phone and slid my phone off into her purse right while I'm writing. I didn't even see this, man. Okay? So the lady ended up still being in the store. He told me what aisle she was on. He said, let's go to her and see if we can get her to give the phone back. I've already alerted the police. I said, okay, cool. We walked up to the lady and I said, excuse me, ma'am. You have my phone. I just need it back. She said, I don't have your phone. ma'am, you do have my phone. You're on camera getting my phone. You put a piece of paper over my phone, you slid it into your purse. It literally showed it. Now, they had been calling my phone going straight to voicemail, all this stuff. You understand? So the guy ends up saying, listen, ma'am, we have you on camera still on the phone. We have already called the police. If you don't give us the phone, we're going to press charges, right? Now, the lady then says, yes, I do have the phone. She went in her purse, gave me the phone. She done already taken the battery out and everything. Like, this old lady was stealing from me. Never expected her. She was never a suspect to me, all right? Now that I have the phone, I hear the police come up. Sir, she was stealing your phone, because Walmart said they wasn't pressing charges, right? Sir, she was stealing your phone. Do you want to press charges on this old lady? They didn't say old lady, but they just said, do I want to press charges? Of course, I'm looking at her like, this old lady, man, she wouldn't survive in jail. So, you know, no, I didn't press charges. I should have pressed charges on her ass. She'd have took me to jail, okay? But let's just say this. Say I take from that moment that you can't trust elderly ladies behind you while in the store. Now, before this, I'm the type of person, if an elderly lady was behind me and she didn't have a whole lot, I would pay for her food. I always do nice stuff like that. I'm just a person who always go about doing good deeds, right? Now, say from that moment, I say elderly ladies are not to be trusted when I'm in the store. So ladies behind me now, old lady, and I turn around and be like, yo, get away from me, yo, back up, back up. Now, wouldn't my fear be reasonable? I mean, I've been robbed by one, right? That's my personal experience. Why can't I take and say all old women are now thieves, right? Especially in the store. Because that would be very unfortunate for all other women who didn't do this to me, right? So I have to deal with that. Yeah, it sucks that it happened to me, and it's not my fault that it happened to me, but who's responsible for getting themselves through this trauma and being able to see the world with rational eyes again? That would be me, correct? And so I wouldn't be able to paint the world that all old women are thieves. Okay, so this is why I say deal with this. Ladies, when men talk about their complaints with women, you guys always assume that they're hurt. Okay, now that is to assume that their view is coming from pain. So you do know that a person's view can be shaped by their pain, right? Because that's what you guys assume on men every time they talk about a woman, and by way of complaining, right? Or you guys assume that they're talking about all women because they're complaining about how women behave, or some women behave. You assume they're talking about every single woman, right? You see how you see how that's an issue, right? I didn't even forgot what I was trying to say, but what I'm trying to say is you guys should understand how someone can be hurt and then have a view of the world, right? Or a view of a certain gender, or a view of a certain thing, right? So whenever you are experiencing this yourself and you've been through some trauma and you've been hurt and you're in pain, deal with that, because ask yourself the same question. Am I hurt? Is this why I'm having this view of men? Am I hurt because I have this irrational fear? Like, is it rational or is it irrational? Ask yourself these questions and try and work through it, okay? Because something may have happened to you, but if you fail to heal from it, you will now be causing the damage to others. Hence why they say hurt people, all right? So if this was my client, I would definitely talk to her about these things, and I would tell her that the way she's seeing the world is very unhealthy, and she should definitely consult someone who can help her talk through this stuff and help her heal from this nonsense. Do you understand? But hopefully you ladies that's watching could have some truths revealed to you today, some understandings revealed to you, and hopefully for you men the same, all right? But I wanted to review this video and just give a different perspective on how I would address this issue, okay? Without being triggered by what she was saying, because it seemed to make men look really bad, okay? But anyway, family, be evolution, be the change that you want to see. No candle loses its flame from lighting another. And if you were to ever find yourself in the middle of chaos, it is in that chaos that you have found yourself. Peace.